Karen thought destroying my retirement lawn was just harmless fun, until she discovered what happens when you mess with an electrician who knows exactly how deep concrete foundations go. For 3 months straight, this entitled maniac used my corner lot as her personal shortcut. Every morning, white BMW X5 roaring across my $2,000 Kentucky bluegrass like she owned the place. The screech of tires shredding my irrigation lines, diesel exhaust poisoning my morning coffee, the wet crunch of destroyed dreams under German engineering. I tried talking. She threatened me. I tried signs. She destroyed them. I called police. They said civil matter. What Karen didn't know? I'd just discovered something very interesting about where my property line actually ended, and where her daily route began. One strategically placed concrete bollard later. $80,000 BMW became expensive modern art. Criminal charges, divorce papers, public humiliation. But that's just the beginning of how this psycho neighbor destroyed her entire life. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if someone kept destroying your property? Drop a flag emoji below and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you about the American dream that turned into a 3-month nightmare. I'm Marcus Thompson, 52, union electrician who'd spent 30 years installing power systems in everything from shopping malls to hospitals. My specialty? Making sure things stayed exactly where they were supposed to be. Concrete foundations for electrical poles, underground cable systems, permanent installations that could survive anything Mother Nature threw at them. After 3 decades of overtime checks and holiday bonuses, I finally bought my corner lot paradise in Millbrook Heights. Sarah, my wife of 26 years, was fighting early-stage Parkinson's. Her world was shrinking, couldn't drive long distances, couldn't tend her beloved garden anymore. This lawn would be our sanctuary, our place to heal. I dropped $3,000 on the works, premium Kentucky bluegrass, underground irrigation with electrical timers I wired myself, soil amendments that smelled like rich chocolate cake. Every morning I'd walk out with coffee, listening to the gentle hiss of sprinklers, watching something beautiful grow from nothing. Then Karen Whitmore decided my property was her personal racetrack. Picture your worst HOA nightmare, then add a BMW and multiply by psychopath. Karen was 48, with highlights that cost more than most people's car payments and an attitude that could curdle milk. She lived in the neighborhood's biggest McMansion. Think Vegas casino meets suburban excess, with her husband Derek, who owned Whitmore Construction. Here's the kicker. Derek's company built half of Millbrook Heights. Karen drove a white BMW X5 with the license plate Karen W, because subtlety was apparently illegal in her world. The first time I found tire tracks carved through my corner, I thought, honest mistake. Deep ruts through grass that hadn't even established yet, leaving behind the smell of torn earth and burning rubber. Day 2, same tracks, same time, same deliberate destruction. Day 3, I installed a security camera. Bingo. Every morning at exactly 7:47 a.m., Princess Karen would come flying around the corner, gun it straight across my property to avoid a 30-second detour, then speed off like she was late for a royal appointment. The footage was gorgeous, crystal clear evidence of someone who thought rules were for little people. So I walked over to introduce myself like a civilized human being. "Excuse me, Mrs. Whitmore? I'm Marcus, your new neighbor. I noticed you've been cutting across my it's a free country." She didn't even look up from her flower beds. "Maybe don't plant so close to the road if you can't handle a little traffic." My electrician brain started calculating load-bearing requirements. "Ma'am, that's my property. I have survey stakes." She whipped around with a smile that belonged in a horror movie. "Are you threatening me? Because my husband built this neighborhood, I'm on the HOA board, and you're about to learn how things work around here. I'd be very, very careful about making accusations." The way she said "very" twice, like she was explaining physics to a 5-year-old. Walking back home, my work boots crunched on the gravel driveway with each step sounding like a countdown. Sarah was watching from the window, and I could see the worry in her trembling hands. That night, I pulled out my electrical code books and started researching. 30 years of installing permanent infrastructure had taught me something Karen clearly didn't understand. When you pick a fight with someone who specializes in making things absolutely, permanently, immovably stable, you better be damn sure you're standing on solid ground. Because I was about to teach her the difference between temporary inconvenience and permanent consequences. And Karen Whitmore was about to discover that when you mess with an electrician's retirement dream, physics always wins. You know what 30 years of electrical work teaches you? How to solve problems with precision and patience. That weekend, I made my first tactical move. At Tony's Hardware, I loaded up on low-voltage landscape lights, motion sensors, and enough weatherproof wire to illuminate a small airport. The familiar smell of copper and plastic insulation reminded me of countless job sites where I'd solved bigger problems than one entitled neighbor. If Karen wanted to use my property as her personal speedway, she was going to get the full Broadway treatment. I spent Saturday and Sunday installing what I privately called the courtesy lighting system. 8 motion-activated floodlights positioned every 6 feet along my property line, triggered by anything larger than a house cat. Each connection was perfect, watertight, code-compliant, and designed to last 20 years. The satisfying click of weatherproof connectors brought back memories of my apprentice days when my foreman taught me that residential low-voltage lighting doesn't require permits in most areas, making it the perfect legal solution for property security. Monday morning, 7:47 a.m. sharp, Karen's BMW comes screaming around the corner, hits the first motion sensor, and boom, 8,000 lumens of pure white light turn her windshield into a miniature sun. The shriek of her brakes was better than my morning coffee. She sat there for 30 seconds, probably seeing spots, then gunned it through anyway, her engine roaring like an angry bear. Tuesday brought the same light show, but this time she laid on the horn like she was announcing the apocalypse. The sound echoed off the neighboring houses, and I saw curtains twitching as people peered out to see what the commotion was about. Wednesday, I added a professional private property electronic surveillance sign right where she couldn't miss it. The smell of fresh metal and vinyl reminded me of job sites where proper signage prevented accidents and liability issues. That's when Karen declared war. Thursday night, I'm settling in to watch the 11 o'clock news when my security system starts chirping like an angry bird. There's Karen, dressed head to toe in black like some suburban ninja, systematically kicking over my landscape lights with the enthusiasm of a toddler having a meltdown. The infrared camera caught everything in beautiful detail, her face twisted with rage, her designer shoes making contact with $800 worth of equipment, even the moment she realized the little red recording light was blinking at her. But here's where my electrical background saved me. I hadn't just installed lights, I'd installed a backup battery system, something I'd learned from years of working on emergency lighting in hospitals. When the main power gets cut, the backup kicks in automatically. So while Karen was busy destroying my primary lighting, my secondary cameras kept rolling, capturing every kick, every muttered curse word, every moment of deliberate vandalism in high-definition glory. Friday morning brought an official HOA complaint in my mailbox. Excessive lighting disturbing neighborhood tranquility and creating safety hazards. Signed by Karen Whitmore, HOA treasurer. The paper felt cheap between my fingers, like her arguments. I called my insurance company and filed a vandalism claim. Then I called Tony. "Marcus, you beautiful genius," Tony said in his thick Brooklyn accent, the sound of power tools humming in the background of his shop. "This crazy broad's been collecting enemies like baseball cards. Half the neighborhood's been in here bitching about her." That afternoon, Tony introduced me to Mrs. Patterson, 78 years old and sharp as a new wire stripper. She'd been documenting Karen's reign of terror for 2 years, keeping detailed notes in a little spiral notebook with the dedication of a professional engineer. She filed complaints about my bird feeders, Mrs. Patterson said, the warm scent of her homemade chocolate chip cookies filling Tony's shop. Apparently they're attracting vermin and lowering property values. Last week she tried to get my mail carrier fired because he cut across her precious lawn to avoid her sprinkler system. But here's where everything changed. While Karen was busy playing Midnight Vandal, my insurance investigator showed up to assess the damage. These guys don't just look at broken lights. They examine everything with the thoroughness of a building inspector. And when this investigator started measuring distances and checking property lines with his laser equipment, he paused at my corner markers. "Mr. Thompson," he said, adjusting his measuring device with the precision I recognized from my own tool use, "I think you might want to have a professional survey done. These property markers look significantly off." The metallic taste of anticipation filled my mouth. Karen had just handed me something bigger than a vandalism claim. She'd given me the key to her entire operation. That night, I started researching concrete bollards with the same methodical approach I'd used for electrical installations my entire career. Permanent solutions require permanent foundations. That insurance investigator's comment about my property markers kept me staring at the ceiling all night. 30 years of electrical work had drilled one rule into my skull. When a professional with precision instruments says something's wrong, you damn well better listen. Monday morning, I called Pete, my old union buddy who'd switched to commercial surveying after his back gave out from crawling through too many electrical conduits. The gravelly sound of his voice and the faint smell of cigarette smoke through the phone brought back memories of job sites where we'd learned that property surveys are public records, information any homeowner can access for the cost of photocopying. "Marcus, you paranoid son of a bitch," Pete laughed. "But yeah, I'll squeeze you in. Union discount, naturally." Before Pete could get out there, I decided to do some detective work. The county clerk's office reeked of old paper and industrial floor wax, with fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry wasps. The same electrical hum I'd heard in every municipal building I'd ever wired. What I discovered in those dusty files made my hands shake with rage. The original 2019 survey showed my property line running a full 12 feet further east than the current markers indicated. But the real smoking gun was an amended survey from 2020, signed by Derek Whitmore, licensed contractor, with a bureaucratic note about correcting measurement errors for municipal compliance. Correcting errors, my ass. Derek had literally moved my property line to give his precious wife more room to drive. Wednesday brought Pete and his crew with equipment that made my laser level look like a Fisher-Price toy. The metallic click of their instruments and the sharp scent of spray paint reminded me of my own methodical approach to electrical installations. Measure 3 times, install once, document everything. "Jesus Christ on a cracker, Marcus," Pete said, rechecking his readings with the intensity of a brain surgeon. "You own 18 feet more than those fake markers show. This whole corner where NASCAR Karen likes to play, that's been your land the entire time." The surveyor's bright orange spray paint created a new reality across my lawn. Karen's daily shortcut wasn't just crossing my property. She was driving across nearly 20 feet of land that legally belonged to me. Every single morning for 3 months, she'd been committing criminal trespassing. But Pete's next discovery made my electrician brain light up like a Christmas tree. "See that fancy retaining wall with the decorative stonework?" Pete pointed toward Karen's landscaping masterpiece. "The whole damn thing sits 4 feet onto your property. Cost probably 15 grand to build, and it's been illegal since day one." I felt the same electric satisfaction I'd experienced when finally tracking down a short circuit after hours of methodical testing. Every piece of this puzzle was clicking into place with perfect precision. That evening, Karen must have spotted the survey flags, because she came clicking across my driveway in her designer heels like a one-woman invasion force. The sharp sound of stilettos on concrete reminded me of hammers on metal, aggressive and impossible to ignore. "What the hell is this?" she snarled, gesturing at the orange flags like they were personally offensive. "You can't just magically move property lines because you're having a breakdown about normal neighborhood traffic." I pulled out Pete's official survey report, the heavy paper crackling with authority. "Mrs. Whitmore, according to this licensed surveyor, you've been criminally trespassing on my property every single day for 3 months. And that gorgeous retaining wall of yours? Also on my land." Her face cycled through more colors than a traffic signal having a seizure. "That's impossible. Derek built this entire development. He knows exactly where every property line runs." I finished with a smile that felt sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, he absolutely does. The original 2019 survey shows these exact boundaries. The mysteriously corrected version from 2020 has your husband's signature all over it." Here's where things got interesting. Instead of backing down, Karen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow sounded more dangerous than screaming. "You stupid blue-collar piece of trash," she hissed, the venom in her voice hitting me like a slap. "You think you can waltz into our neighborhood and start making demands? Derek and I own this place. We decide who belongs here and who doesn't. And people who cause problems for us, well, they tend to find life gets very, very difficult." The smell of her expensive perfume mixed with the metallic taste of pure fury in my mouth. This wasn't just about property lines anymore. This was about power, class, and who got to decide the rules. After she stormed off, leaving the evening air poisoned with threats and entitlement, I made 2 phone calls. First to my insurance company's legal department, who explained that systematic property fraud often involved entire networks of corruption. Second call was to a concrete contractor I'd worked with on commercial jobs, because some problems require permanent solutions. Karen's promise to make my life very, very difficult wasn't just a threat. It was a preview of coming attractions. Friday morning, I'm savoring my coffee and admiring my perfectly surveyed property lines when a white city truck rumbles into my driveway like a municipal tank. Out steps Dave Morrison, code enforcement officer with a clipboard and the dead-eyed expression of someone who's given up on justice. "Mr. Thompson?" Anonymous complaint about unpermitted electrical installations creating safety hazards. The metallic taste of bureaucratic corruption replaced my morning brew. What installations? Dave gestured toward my landscape lighting like he was identifying evidence at a crime scene. Motion-activated floodlighting, underground wiring systems, potential commercial-grade equipment in residential zoning. Anonymous complaint. Right. I could practically smell Karen's vanilla perfume wafting off his clipboard. Those are standard low-voltage landscape lights, I explained, drawing on 30 years of electrical expertise. Everything's code compliant. I'm a licensed union electrician. But Dave wasn't interested in facts. He pulled out a measuring tape and started documenting my installations with the mechanical precision of someone following orders rather than regulations. The sharp sound of metal tape snapping back reminded me of every legitimate code inspection I'd ever passed, except this felt like theater. $1,200 fine for unpermitted electrical work. 10 days to remove everything or face escalating penalties. Here's where my background saved me. Decades of permit applications had taught me that residential low-voltage lighting under 30 volts requires no permits in our municipality, a fact I'd triple-checked before installing the first fixture. But something about Dave's demeanor triggered my troubleshooting instincts. Dave, quick question. Where do you golf? His pen froze mid-signature. What's that got to do with anything? Neighbor mentioned seeing you at Millbrook Country Club. Beautiful course. The flush creeping up his neck was more revealing than any confession. Millbrook Country Club was Derek Whitmore's weekend headquarters, where construction contracts got discussed over 18 holes and municipal favors got traded like baseball cards. After Dave drove off with his fraudulent citation, I called my old foreman Big Jim, whose gravelly voice carried 40 years of municipal building department experience. Dave Morrison's been struggling since his divorce, Jim explained, the sound of hammering echoing in the background. Word around the department is he's been accommodating certain developers lately. Bills don't pay themselves, you know. The stench of corruption was getting thicker than summer asphalt. That afternoon, I filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all building complaints from the past 18 months. When the city clerk handed me a stack of photocopied papers that smelled like toner and broken dreams, I understood the true scope of Karen's operation. 47 complaints, all signed by Karen Whitmore, targeting 19 different neighbors. Excessive garden decorations, unauthorized driveway modifications, suspicious property improvements, paint color violations. The woman had weaponized municipal bureaucracy like a suburban dictator, and Dave Morrison had been her willing enforcer in at least 12 cases. But then I found the smoking gun that made my electrician brain light up like a Christmas tree. 3 months ago, Dave had signed off on Derek's $1 million addition project, the same timeline when those property surveys got mysteriously corrected, without requiring a single permit revision or inspection delay. A project that normally takes 6 months of bureaucratic red tape sailed through Dave's office in 3 weeks. The coincidence was more obvious than a short circuit in a thunderstorm. I called Tom Rodriguez, the city's head electrical inspector, a straight shooter I'd worked with on commercial projects for 15 years. Power tools hummed in the background when he answered, the familiar sound of honest work being done right. Marcus, retirement boring you already? Tom, I need a second opinion on some residential lighting. Professional courtesy? 30 minutes later, Tom stood in my yard with his own precision instruments, examining my installations with the thoroughness of a surgeon. His expression shifted from professional interest to barely contained outrage. This is museum-quality work, Marcus. Better than 90% of commercial installations I inspect. He held up Dave's citation like it was contaminated. Whoever wrote this either failed electrical code certification or they're deliberately lying. But here's the plot twist that changed everything. While Tom was documenting Dave's fraudulent inspection, his radio crackled with an emergency call. Major electrical fire at Derek Whitmore's latest construction site. Faulty wiring, no permits on file, potential criminal negligence. The irony was so perfect it tasted like victory. Tom's official report to the city that evening didn't just exonerate my installations. It triggered a full internal investigation into Dave Morrison's recent inspection decisions and his suspicious relationship with certain local developers. That night, I finalized my concrete bollard specifications with the same methodical precision I'd brought to electrical installations my entire career. Every measurement perfect, every regulation satisfied, every detail designed for permanent results. Because Karen was about to discover that some people build things that last forever. The professional survey results that Pete delivered Monday morning didn't just confirm my suspicions. They blew the lid off a property theft operation that would make a con artist weep with admiration. "Marcus, sit down for this," Pete said, spreading blueprints across my kitchen table with the solemnity of a coroner delivering bad news. The papers crackled with official authority, and the smell of fresh ink mixed with my coffee created an oddly ceremonial atmosphere. The numbers were staggering. I didn't just own 8 or 12 feet more than those fake markers indicated. I owned 18 feet beyond what Karen thought was her territory. Her daily BMW shortcut crossed nearly 20 feet of my property while her precious decorative retaining wall sat 4.5 feet onto my land. But here's where it gets beautiful. Karen's husband Derek hadn't just moved my property line. He'd systematically stolen land from 6 different homeowners over the past 4 years, creating a spiderweb of fraudulent surveys that netted his family an extra half-acre of prime real estate. "Look at this." Pete pointed to the overlay comparison, his finger tracing the differences between original and corrected surveys. Mrs. Patterson lost 12 feet of her backyard. The Hendersons lost 8 feet along their side lot. Even that new family, the Garcias, got robbed of 15 feet before they'd finished unpacking. The metallic taste of pure rage filled my mouth. This wasn't just about my lawn anymore. This was about a systematic theft operation disguised as clerical corrections. But my electrical background had taught me something Derek apparently never learned. When you build on stolen ground, everything becomes unstable. And I was about to introduce some serious instability to Karen's perfect little world. See, 30 years of installing electrical foundations had given me expertise Derek never anticipated. I knew exactly how deep concrete bollards needed to go for maximum vehicle impact resistance. I understood load-bearing calculations, stress distribution, and most importantly, the precise placement that would turn a speeding BMW into abstract art. The legal consultation that afternoon confirmed what my gut already knew. Real estate attorney Sarah Kim examined Pete's survey with the intensity of a detective studying crime scene photos, the fluorescent lights in her office buzzing with familiar electrical hum. "Mr. Thompson, you have grounds for a lawsuit that could bankrupt the Whitmores," she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence of someone who'd won bigger battles. "Systematic property fraud, municipal corruption, civil rights violations under color of authority. We're talking criminal charges and 7-figure damages." The sweet smell of victory was intoxicating, but I had a better idea. What if I wanted to install a decorative concrete bollard on my property? Purely for aesthetic purposes, of course. Sarah's smile was sharper than wire strippers. Decorative landscaping features are completely legal, provided they're installed within your property boundaries and meet municipal safety standards. That evening, I stood at my corner property line with a tape measure, calculating the exact spot where Karen's passenger side wheel tracked every morning at 7:47 a.m. The mathematics were beautiful in their simplicity. Physics plus precision equals permanent problem solving. My electrician's training had taught me that the most elegant solutions often look deceptively simple. One decorative concrete bollard, professionally installed according to commercial electrical pole standards, positioned exactly where momentum and stupidity would intersect at 25 miles per hour. The foundation would go 5 feet deep with rebar reinforcement, the same specifications I'd used for electrical installations that needed to survive hurricanes. The bollard itself would be 42 inches of reinforced concrete with a decorative cap, perfectly legal and absolutely immovable. Karen's illegal shortcut was about to become the most expensive driving lesson in municipal history. And the beautiful part? She was going to do it to herself. Some people plan revenge. I engineer permanent solutions. Tuesday morning, I drove to Industrial Concrete Supply with the same methodical approach I'd brought to every major electrical installation in my career. The warehouse smelled like cement dust and rebar, triggering memories of commercial jobs where foundations had to be absolutely perfect the first time. "I need a decorative bollard," I told Miguel, the manager who'd supplied concrete for half my electrical pole installations. "Residential application, but I want commercial-grade specifications." Miguel raised an eyebrow at my requirements. 42 inches tall, 8-inch diameter, reinforced core, decorative granite cap. "Jesus, Marcus, you planning to stop a tank?" "Just want something that'll last," I said, the taste of anticipation metallic on my tongue. The technical specifications were beautiful in their precision. Foundation depth, 5 feet extending below the frost line for permanent stability. Rebar reinforcement, 4 half-inch steel bars running the full height, cross-braced every 18 inches. Quickset concrete, 4,000 psi compressive strength, the same standard I'd used for electrical installations that needed to survive hurricane-force winds. Wednesday brought the legal team assembly. Real estate attorney Sarah Kim had connected me with a surveyor willing to testify about fraudulent boundary alterations, while my insurance company's investigator documented every piece of evidence we'd collected. The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and expensive legal pads, but the atmosphere crackled with the electricity of impending justice. The beauty of this approach, Sarah explained, spreading documents across the mahogany table, is that decorative landscaping elements are protected speech under municipal aesthetic regulations. As long as your bollard meets safety standards and stays within your property boundaries, Karen can't touch it legally. But I wasn't just relying on legal protection. My electrical background had taught me that backup systems prevent catastrophic failures, so I'd recruited a community network that would make Karen's retaliation attempts impossible. Mrs. Patterson had organized what she called the Millbrook Neighborhood Defense Committee, which sounded official enough to make HOA board members nervous. Tony's hardware store became our unofficial headquarters, where the smell of motor oil and metal shavings mixed with the excitement of neighbors who'd finally found someone willing to fight back. "That woman's been terrorizing this neighborhood for 4 years," said Dave Henderson, whose backyard had been stolen 8 feet at a time. "If you can stop her, you've got my full support." The Garcias, who'd lost 15 feet of their property before they'd even finished unpacking, offered to document everything from their security cameras. Jim Martinez volunteered his landscaping crew to help with the installation. Even the mailman, who'd been harassed by Karen for walking on her grass, promised to keep watch during his daily rounds. Thursday afternoon brought the precision installation planning that separated professional work from amateur attempts. Using a laser transit I'd borrowed from Pete's surveying company, I marked the exact spot where Karen's passenger wheel crossed my property line every morning. The calculations were poetry and mathematics: vehicle speed, impact angle, center of gravity shift, and the precise positioning that would maximize both damage and legal protection. The bollard would sit 8 inches inside my confirmed property boundary, positioned where physics and stupidity would intersect at exactly 7:47 a.m. My electrical training had taught me that proper grounding prevents system failures, and this bollard would be grounded so thoroughly that nothing short of dynamite could move it. Friday morning, Miguel's crew arrived with the concrete mixer that sounded like a mechanical dragon breathing life into my plans. The sweet chemical smell of quickset concrete mixing with water reminded me of every foundation I'd ever poured for electrical installations that needed to last decades. The excavation went 5 feet down, revealing the dark soil that would cradle my revenge for the next century. 4 pieces of half-inch rebar formed a steel skeleton that could stop a freight train, while the concrete mixture achieved the consistency of liquid stone. "This thing's going to be here when your great-grandkids are old," Miguel observed, watching his crew pour the foundation with professional pride. The bollard itself was a masterpiece of functional art: reinforced concrete core, decorative granite cap, and a small bronze plaque reading Maple Grove Memorial Garden, established 2024. To any casual observer, it looked like a thoughtful landscaping accent. To Karen's BMW, it would look like the hand of God. While the concrete cured over the weekend, I repositioned my security cameras for optimal impact documentation and placed attorney Sarah Kim's business card on speed dial. Every detail had been planned with the same obsessive precision I'd brought to electrical installations where lives depended on getting it right. Monday morning, Karen would discover that some problems require permanent solutions, and some electricians know exactly how to make things stick. Karen's vacation to Palm Beach ended Monday morning at exactly 7:47 a.m., marked by the familiar sound of her BMW engine revving with its usual entitled aggression. What she didn't expect was the decorative landscape feature that had sprouted in her absence like a concrete mushroom of justice. I was positioned at my kitchen window with fresh coffee and a front row seat to physics in action. The steam from my mug mixed with the crisp morning air as Karen's white BMW came screaming around the corner at her usual 25 miles per hour, following the exact trajectory she'd carved through my property for 3 months. The moment of impact was everything I'd calculated and more. Karen's passenger side wheel clipped my bollard at precisely the angle I'd engineered, creating a symphony of destruction that echoed off every house in the neighborhood. The metallic screech of rim against concrete, the explosive pop of tire meeting immovable object, the satisfying crunch of German engineering discovering American mathematics. Her BMW lurched sideways like a wounded animal, suspension components singing their death song as the wheel well crumpled against my perfectly positioned monument to property rights. Steam hissed from her radiator like an angry dragon, while her hazard lights blinked frantically in automotive distress. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hiss of escaping coolant and Karen's voice rising in a crescendo of rage that would have impressed opera singers. "What the fuck is that thing?" I stepped onto my front porch with the casual satisfaction of someone whose morning coffee had just gotten significantly better. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitmore. That's a decorative garden feature. I installed it while you were away." Karen emerged from her disabled BMW like a fury rising from the underworld, her designer vacation outfit contrasting beautifully with the smell of antifreeze and burnt rubber. "You did this on purpose. You set a trap." "Ma'am, that bollard is 8 inches inside my property line, professionally installed according to municipal standards." I held up Pete's survey documentation like a shield made of legal paper. "Perhaps you should consider using the public street instead of my private property." The transformation in Karen's face was spectacular. Confusion shifting to understanding, understanding morphing into pure rage. "You son of a bitch. This is going to cost you everything." But here's where Karen made her first tactical error. Instead of calling her insurance company or a tow truck, she called the police, demanding they arrest me for setting booby traps and attempted vehicular assault. Officer Rodriguez arrived 20 minutes later, his patrol car's radio crackling with the background noise of municipal authority. The smell of hot asphalt and Karen's increasingly desperate perfume created an oddly festive atmosphere as he examined the scene with professional detachment. "Ma'am, this appears to be a decorative landscape feature installed on private property," he observed, measuring the distance from bollard to property line with the same laser precision Pete had used for the survey. "Do you have permission to drive on this gentleman's land?" Karen's response was a masterpiece of entitled fury. "I don't need permission. I've been using this route for months. He can't just change the rules." Officer Rodriguez's expression shifted to the kind of patient exhaustion reserved for dealing with particularly dense criminals. "Ma'am, driving on private property without permission is criminal trespassing. The property owner has every right to install landscape features within his boundaries." That's when Karen played her trump card, pulling out her phone to call Derek with the desperate energy of someone whose world was collapsing in real time. "Derek, get down here right now. This blue-collar asshole destroyed my car." But Derek's response, audible through the phone's speaker, wasn't quite the cavalry charge Karen expected. "Jesus Christ, Karen, what did you do now? I'm in the middle of a code enforcement investigation. Handle it yourself." The color drained from Karen's face faster than coolant from her radiator. Derek hanging up on her in front of witnesses was more devastating than the actual car damage. Officer Rodriguez completed his report with the bureaucratic efficiency of someone who'd seen this exact scenario play out countless times. No charges filed, incident classified as driver error on private property, insurance claim responsibility falling squarely on Karen's shoulders. After the tow truck hauled away her wounded BMW, leaving only the lingering scent of defeat and expensive perfume, Karen stood in my driveway like a general surveying a lost battlefield. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice carrying the kind of quiet venom that promised escalation beyond anything we'd experienced so far. But I had something she didn't. A community of allies, legal documentation, and the kind of methodical planning that comes from 30 years of solving problems that have to work the first time. That evening, Mrs. Patterson organized an impromptu bollard appreciation party in my backyard, where the smell of barbecue and the sound of neighbors laughing created the exact opposite atmosphere of Karen's morning meltdown. The war was just beginning, but the first battle belonged to physics, precision, and the power of knowing exactly where your property lines end. Karen's promise that this isn't over wasn't just a threat, it was a declaration of total war. And like most desperate people backed into a corner, she was about to make the kind of mistakes that turn property disputes into felony charges. Wednesday afternoon, I'm replacing a sprinkler head damaged by Karen's automotive encounter with my bollard when Mrs. Patterson shuffles over with the urgency of someone carrying nuclear secrets. "Marcus, dear, you need to see this," she whispered, producing her smartphone with the pride of someone who'd finally mastered modern technology. I recorded Karen on the phone this morning. The video quality was grainy, but the audio was crystal clear. Karen pacing in her driveway like a caged animal, screaming into her phone with the kind of volume that suggested the person on the other end was either deaf or hiding. "I don't care what it costs. I want that thing gone by Friday, and I want it to look like an accident." Mrs. Patterson's arthritic finger scrolled to the next video. "This one's even better. Same day, different call." Karen's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper that carried farther than her shouting. "Make it look like emergency utility work. Gas leak, water main break, whatever. I'll handle the paperwork with the city." The metallic taste of impending victory filled my mouth. Karen wasn't just planning vandalism. She was orchestrating fraud on a municipal level. Thursday morning brought the first phase of Karen's master plan. A yellow excavator rumbled down Maple Grove Avenue with the authority of legitimate construction equipment, operated by a guy who looked like he'd learned to drive heavy machinery in prison. I called the gas company first. "Hi, this is Marcus Thompson on Maple Grove. Do you have any emergency work scheduled in my area today?" "No, sir. Nothing on the books for your street this week." Water Department. "Nope. No scheduled maintenance in Millbrook Heights." Electric Company. "All our crews are working downtown today, Mr. Thompson." Strike 3. Karen's emergency utility work was about as legitimate as her property boundaries. But here's where my electrical background saved the day again. Years of coordinating with utility companies had taught me that real emergency work requires permits, proper signage, and coordination with multiple departments. Fake emergency work just requires a desperate housewife with too much money and no common sense. I positioned myself at my front window with my phone ready to record as the excavator approached my bollard like a mechanical gladiator entering the arena. The operator clearly knew this wasn't legitimate work. His movements were hesitant, constantly looking around like he expected sirens at any moment. Then Karen appeared, marching across my lawn in designer boots completely inappropriate for construction site supervision. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with her aggressive perfume created an oddly toxic atmosphere as she pointed at my bollard, like a general ordering artillery strikes. "Right there! Make it look like you're repairing a gas leak." That's when I called 911. "Emergency services? What's your emergency?" "I have someone operating heavy machinery on my property without permission, claiming to be doing utility work that no utility company authorized." The police response was faster than Karen's BMW used to be. 2 patrol cars and a supervisor arrived just as the excavator's bucket made contact with my bollard, creating sparks that looked appropriately dramatic for the cameras now recording everything. Officer Martinez stepped out of his patrol car with the weary expression of someone who'd dealt with Karen before. "Ma'am, do you have permits for this excavation work?" Karen's attempt at innocent confusion was Oscar-worthy. "Officer, this is emergency utility repair, gas leak detection." "Which utility company?" The pause that followed was longer than Karen's usual attention span. The city sent them." Officer Martinez pulled out his radio and made the calls I'd already made, confirming what we all knew. No utility work was scheduled, no permits had been issued, and no gas leaks existed anywhere near my property. But the beautiful part was yet to come. The excavator operator, faced with potential criminal charges, decided to save his own skin by producing his phone and playing the recording of Karen offering him $10,000 cash to accidentally damage my landscaping while making it look like legitimate utility work. Karen's voice crystal clear through his phone speaker. "I don't care if it's illegal. I want that concrete monstrosity gone, and I want the old man to pay for it." The click of handcuffs around Karen's wrists was more satisfying than the sound of her BMW meeting my bollard. Charges included fraud, conspiracy to commit vandalism, impersonating utility authority, criminal trespassing, and attempted bribery of a municipal contractor. The excavator operator, facing his own charges, revealed that Derek had been involved in the planning, providing fake utility company letterhead and municipal work orders. The conspiracy reached deeper than anyone had imagined. As Karen was loaded into the patrol car, her final words were directed at me through gritted teeth. "You have no idea what you've started, you pathetic blue-collar piece of garbage." But I knew exactly what I'd started. The systematic destruction of a criminal enterprise that had been terrorizing my neighborhood for years. That evening, local reporter Janet Williams knocked on my door with the hunger of someone who'd scented a Pulitzer Prize in the making. The monthly city council meeting had never seen a crowd like this. Standing room only, 3 local TV stations with cameras rolling and an atmosphere charged with the electricity of long-awaited justice. The municipal building's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry wasps as nearly 200 residents packed into a space designed for 50. Karen arrived 20 minutes late with a legal team that probably cost more than my annual retirement income. Her lead attorney, Richard Pemberton, carried himself with the arrogance of someone who'd never lost a case involving blue-collar defendants. The smell of expensive cologne and legal desperation followed them to the front row like a toxic cloud. City Council Chairman Bob Mitchell called the meeting to order with the nervous energy of someone who knew he was about to witness either justice or a complete clusterfuck. "We're here to address property boundary disputes and municipal code enforcement practices in the Millbrook Heights development." Pemberton stood up like he was addressing the Supreme Court instead of a small-town council meeting. Chairman Mitchell, my client has been the victim of a targeted harassment campaign by Mr. Thompson, who has deliberately created dangerous obstacles on public thoroughfares to cause property damage and personal injury. The legal terminology sounded impressive until you realized it was complete bullshit wrapped in expensive vocabulary. Furthermore, Pemberton continued, his voice carrying the kind of condescension that made my electrician hands itch for wire strippers. Mr. Thompson's so-called decorative bollard represents an attractive nuisance and public safety hazard that the city has a responsibility to remove immediately. Council member Sarah Gonzalez leaned forward with the expression of someone who'd actually read the case files. Mr. Pemberton, are you claiming that a decorative landscape feature installed 8 inches inside private property boundaries somehow constitutes a public hazard? That's when Pemberton made his fatal mistake. The location of that obstacle was specifically calculated to cause maximum damage to vehicles using the established traffic pattern through the area. The courtroom-style murmur that rippled through the crowd was like thunder before lightning. Pemberton had just admitted that Karen's established traffic pattern involved driving across my private property. I stood up with the measured confidence of someone whose case was built on mathematical precision rather than legal theatrics. Chairman Mitchell, may I present evidence to the council? Attorney Sarah Kim had prepared a presentation that would have impressed NASA engineers. Property surveys, security camera footage, municipal code citations, and a timeline of criminal activity that painted Karen's operation as systematic fraud disguised as neighborhood complaints. The first exhibit was Pete's professional survey, displayed on a screen large enough for everyone to see. The collective gasp when the actual property boundaries appeared was audible throughout the room. Karen hadn't just been trespassing. She'd been stealing land from 6 different families for 4 years. As you can see, I explained, pointing to the overlay comparison with the laser pointer's red dot dancing across the screen. The Whitmore family has systematically altered property boundaries to benefit their own interests, while filing fraudulent complaints against neighbors who questioned their activities. But the real showstopper was the security footage compilation. 3 months of Karen's BMW deliberately crossing my property, followed by her nighttime vandalism of my lighting system, culminating in the excavator incident with crystal-clear audio of her offering bribes for criminal destruction of property. The crowd's reaction when Karen's voice played through the sound system, "I want that concrete monstrosity gone and I want the old man to pay for it," was like a dam bursting. Spontaneous applause, cheers, and someone in the back shouting, "Lock her up!" Councilmember Patricia Williams raised her hand for silence. Mrs. Whitmore, do you have anything to say in your defense? Karen stood up like she was ascending to a throne rather than facing municipal justice. Her voice carried the same entitled fury I'd heard in my driveway, but now it was amplified for everyone to witness. "This is a conspiracy!" she shrieked, her perfectly styled hair trembling with rage. "A blue-collar conspiracy designed to destroy successful people who've built this community. These people are jealous of what Derek and I have accomplished." The silence that followed was more damning than any guilty verdict. Karen had just revealed her true character to 200 witnesses and 3 television cameras. That's when FBI agent Patricia Rodriguez stepped forward from the back of the room like justice personified. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Agent Rodriguez, Federal Bureau of Investigation. We've been investigating municipal corruption in conjunction with construction fraud, and your case has provided valuable evidence for our ongoing inquiry." The color drained from Karen's face faster than coolant from her BMW radiator. "Federal investigation? Your husband's construction company has been altering property surveys across 3 counties, with municipal code enforcement officers providing cover in exchange for personal favors. We estimate the total property theft at over $2 million. Council Chairman Mitchell's gavel came down like a judge's sentence. The city of Millbrook officially supports Mr. Thompson's property rights and apologizes for any municipal code enforcement irregularities. All fines and citations against Mr. Thompson are hereby dismissed. Karen's final meltdown was worthy of reality television. "You'll all regret this. This whole corrupt town will pay for protecting this pathetic loser." As security escorted her from the building, the crowd erupted in applause that lasted longer than her marriage would. 6 months after the town hall meeting that ended Karen Whitmore's criminal empire, my morning coffee tastes sweeter than ever. Justice, it turns out, has a flavor all its own. Karen pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges in a deal that saved taxpayers the cost of a trial, but cost her everything that mattered. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years probation, and $53,000 in restitution to the neighbors whose land she'd stolen. Her McMansion sold for $90,000 below market value, every penny consumed by legal fees and victim compensation. Derek got 3 years federal time for contractor fraud and permanently lost his construction license. The FBI investigation my little Bollard triggered revealed a property theft network spanning 4 counties, involving 17 municipal employees and stealing over $3 million in land value from working families. Sometimes small acts of resistance topple entire criminal empires. But the real victory wasn't watching Karen get handcuffed. It was watching my neighborhood bloom into the community it was always meant to be. I donated my entire $38,000 settlement to establish the Millbrook Neighborhood Justice Fund, providing free legal resources for residents facing contractor fraud, property disputes, or municipal corruption. Mrs. Patterson became our volunteer coordinator, applying the same meticulous documentation skills she'd used to bring down Karen. Our first case helped the Martinez family recover $22,000 from a roofing scam. Our second stopped a developer from stealing playground space from the elementary school. Our third provided legal support for elderly residents targeted by predatory contractors. Knowledge shared becomes power multiplied. Sarah's transformation has been the most beautiful part of this whole journey. Once the stress of our property war ended, her Parkinson's symptoms stabilized dramatically. She started an herb garden next to my famous bollard, where the sweet smell of rosemary and thyme mingles with the satisfaction of victory every morning. Her laughter, which had been missing for months during Karen's reign of terror, now fills our backyard during evening barbecues with neighbors who've become genuine friends. My bollard achieved fame beyond anything I'd imagined. The bronze plaque now reads, Millbrook Memorial to Community Justice, where neighbors stand together, Este 2024. Electrical contractors bring apprentices to see what happens when technical knowledge serves moral purpose. Property rights organizations use our story in training seminars. Law schools teach our case as an example of effective grassroots legal strategy. Tony's hardware store became our unofficial community center, where the familiar smell of WD-40 and the sound of neighbors solving problems together creates an atmosphere of genuine mutual aid. He now offers monthly workshops on property rights, evidence documentation, and basic legal procedures. Turns out our neighborhood was full of teachers, accountants, nurses, and craftspeople whose combined skills could solve almost any problem. The Garcia family used their settlement to open Bollard Cafe, which has become our weekly gathering spot where community business gets done over exceptional coffee and Maria's homemade empanadas. Dave Henderson started a neighborhood watch program that's eliminated petty crime entirely. Even our mail carrier, who endured years of Karen's harassment, now stops for coffee and updates on community projects. But my proudest achievement is personal. I've become the neighborhood's go-to consultant for property rights and municipal advocacy. My electrical background provided the technical foundation, but these neighbors taught me that expertise becomes powerful when it serves community justice rather than individual profit. Last week, a young couple with twin toddlers moved into Karen's old house. They seem wonderful, respectful, community-minded, eager to contribute. But I noticed their contractor installing a fence that might encroach on the Patterson property line, and Mrs. Patterson has already started taking her signature detailed photographs. Some lessons bear repeating, and some communities are worth protecting. The bollard still stands proud in my corner garden, decorated with Sarah's flowers and surrounded by the laughter of children who play freely in a neighborhood where bullies no longer rule. Every morning when I walk out with my coffee, I'm reminded that sometimes the most permanent solutions start with one person willing to dig deep foundations for justice. Drop your worst HOA or neighbor nightmare in the comments below. I read every story personally, and some of you might inspire the next episode of HOA Stories. Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard. Subscribe to HOA Stories and hit that notification bell for more tales of regular people fighting back against entitled neighbors, corrupt systems, and petty tyrants. Because sometimes the best revenge is building something that lasts forever.
We appreciate you spending your time with us on HOA Stories, where HOA Karens finally get checked. If you enjoyed today's drama, hit like, comment on your favorite part below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll be the first to catch our next HOA Showdown.